Welcome to Mastery with Science, home to mad scientists, rogue entrepreneurs, and the coaches with the mostest. Join us in our lab where we mix the old recipes with new formulas and our secret sauce to create incomparable, next-level proven results for you. We call this Mastery with Science. So, slap on your gloves and put on your goggles because JB and the doctor are in the lab.
It's alive!
Welcome to Mastery with Science with JB and the Doctor, Episode 4. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about running a business, dealing with family, and keeping it all together during COVID.
Hey everybody, I'm JB.
And I'm the Doctor.
Before we launch into the show, we wanted to share with you, we've got some upcoming freebies you're not going to want to miss. We have a free upcoming webinar. Details are in the show notes. Don't forget, you can find us at JB and the Doctor. We're on Twitter, Instagram. We have a Facebook community group you're going to want to join. We share our very best ideas, and you get to share yours. It's an awesome group. Make sure you check it out. We're even on YouTube. So see it, all of our content, all of our platforms, and make sure you make our free webinar. Where can you find the details? Again, it's in the show notes.
And now, on to the show.
Well, Doc, it's been a heck of a weekend for me. What about you?
Not too bad. Surviving.
Yeah, you know, it was, it's interesting. I'm still getting used to this new normal in a way, but I know we've been like 5-6 months deep in it. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and, you know, they said something surprising to me that they're just now starting to accept everything that we're dealing with. And they said they're a little slow to process. And I said, you think?
5-6 months. That's plenty of time just to adjust, right?
Yeah, I guess it's quite the adjustment period.
So speaking of adjustment, let's update our listeners on what we're talking about, because they might have found us in the future, in the past, Back to the Future. I don't know how that works. But if maybe 3 years later they're hearing this episode for the first time because they wanted to go all the way back to the beginning of our catalog. We are talking about COVID-19, the pandemic that's taken over 2020, and how that is affecting everybody. And that's going to be the topic of today's episode.
Yeah, in particular, we're going to talk about managing to COVID while you're running a business, and you got family and friends and everything else that you got to deal with, because it is, if it wasn't enough to juggle before, well, you know what? Hey, you're juggling. Yeah, you know, you got the balls in the air one way or the other. So how do we deal with it?
Well, we could be like your buddy and wait 5-6 months before we have to realize that it's going on. That's one strategy.
Yeah, put your head in the sand. That's a good one. The camel approach. I like that.
How do you think that works for the camel?
I mean, they how long have the camels been around doing that stuff? It's probably a pretty good strategy for them. I don't think it's a good strategy for us, though. Can't bury your head in the sand too long with life. It's still happening around you, right?
Yeah, especially seeing that I don't know if those are camels that do that, and maybe ostriches instead, but semantics.
Yeah, it's ostriches, huh? Ostriches scare me. Camels are mean. They might spit at you, but like an ostrich will come at you.
It's a llama, dude.
Yeah. So you know, I got an interesting story with this whole managing to COVID along with family and running a business, because it really does ask a lot. I've got the decision that we had to make about education and school, and what do we do here, and do we have a choice even on virtual or not? And this is a tough one for me as a dad, as a husband, you know, trying to figure out what the best role is for my kid and the best route for them to go. I struggle with things like this. It was not an easy decision, and I got some what I felt was really good advice from somebody the other week, and I'm curious what you think about it, Doc. There's a good friend of mine, and he said to me, you know, sometimes when life throws so much uncertainty at us, when we know so little about what's happening, sometimes the best decision to make is really no decision at all. Just wait and see how things play out, before you decide too early. And I thought that was really interesting. What are your thoughts around that?
I would say that's a very good advice. Almost sound like something I would say. So whoever this person is, wasn't me this time.
No, it wasn't you. Sorry.
It's definitely a good idea. A lot of times we make initial reactions just based off of emotion, right? When we see something, the emotion takes over. And we don't actually respond, we react. And that's usually when we get into trouble. That's when we're having arguments with people, we stop listening to what they're saying because we're no longer responding to them. We're just preparing what we're gonna say in defense. And a lot of the times we don't even get that far when we have that something that initially it comes against us. We just react. We react emotionally. We react anger. We react with frustration. And then we shut down all rational thought after that. So a lot of times when I'm working with people, the first thing I tell them to do is try to get that reaction to turn into a response. And the way to do that is to take a second and kind of just stop and listen what's being said and think about it and then respond. So in your case, it makes perfect sense. What your buddy was saying was to kind of pull back a little bit, give it some thought, so you're not playing off of emotion, you're playing off of some sound science, and we like science.
And I got to agree with you. I think you hit it spot on, Doc. I was reacting. I was reacting to the situation and trying to solve for a problem that maybe had no good solution in the first place, at least not at that point with what I'd been presented with. And so to stop and pause and develop a response, there's a number of times I've been told that in my life. I'm sure we're all guilty of something like that. Can we ever avoid really reacting? I don't feel like we can, right? I mean, we probably just need to acknowledge it, if anything, and learn to recognize when we're doing it and take a pause.
Well, it's definitely a good skill to learn, and I think you can. But like most things, it goes against our natural nature. Our natural nature is survival, right? So if we're trying to survive, we react to the situation with our fight or flight to keep us alive. And that served us well for millions of years. Our brain it's evolved quite a bit, but the midbrain hasn't evolved that much. It's still our reptilian brain, so we still work on that kind of immediate survival mode, which leads us to the immediate reaction. But like everything else, it's a behavior that we can change. We just have to work on being aware of our response as opposed to a reaction.
I just feel like that was a very covert and subtle dig at me where I'm like, no, there's no way to avoid reacting. And you're like, yeah, you can definitely work on that and get better.
It was not a subtle dig at you. If I'm going to take a dig, I'm just going to go straight at you.
It's just coming straight at me. Yeah, okay, like an ostrich. You got a freaking ostrich over here with me.
It's a llama, dude.
Well, so, it really is interesting, the reaction and the response and getting better at it, because I will say this. I think this environment has given us it's like a forge. I mean, you're really talking about an environment where you can choose to really come out stronger and harder right now, and you can better yourself, and you can take everything that's happening as an opportunity, or you can put your head in the sand. I know which option I'm going to take.
Do I guess which one that is, or do I?
That silence is my head in the sand. Yeah, it really is interesting. We are afforded opportunities like this. When life makes us uncomfortable, that is when we're going to make decisions. We say that in sales all the time. You're never going to make a decision unless you're uncomfortable. There's got to be a pain point there somewhere. And you talk about this, putting pain points out there. My gosh, life has changed a lot in just a few months.
So what is the other option really, though? If things are coming at us, we have to respond. There has to be some sort of response at some point. I mean, that's part of how life goes. We have to keep moving, so you have to respond.
Well, yeah, at some point you do, and I guess an inaction is still a response. We can choose to do nothing, and that is a response. and maybe long term not the best response. So here's the difference, I guess, between reacting and responding. You can choose not to react and compose yourself so that you can make an informed response, but that response might just be do nothing. I feel like this is like some real deep philosophy. I was never good at philosophy. I took philosophy in college. I thought I was going to be great at philosophy. Turns out I am not that philosophical.
That's pretty deep.
Thanks.
But tell me a little bit more. I'm interested to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would be here, like what that decision was like, having to figure out what's going to go on with education.
Well, it's hard because you've got not just me making that decision, but you've got my spouse, my wife as well, who's got her own opinion and feelings on things, and she's coming from a different perspective than I am, and it is a mutual decision between us. But my son's also at the age at 6 years old where we care about his opinion and what he wants, and that's a measured response. We're not giving him full sway, but we are hearing him, and we think it's appropriate for him to be able to give us some feedback on what's important to him. It was a really tough decision to make. Neither of us felt good, and both of us have personalities where we tend to really forge our own paths. We like to take that road less traveled, a little Robert Frost for you if any of your poets out there. And that road less traveled, for us, doesn't always mean that we're going to conform and make the same decisions that a lot of other people make. But our options are limited in something like this, and so we did have to make a decision, and we ultimately decided that we felt like if we could get our son into a school where he was physically in school, it was worth the risk out there. Because we kind of had to measure and weigh out the scales of the risk of mental health and education and growth and moving forward in life with the physical risk of COVID. And that's not an easy decision by any means for anybody. And nobody knows they're right or wrong when they make a decision like that.
Well, I think that's what's interesting is because when we make decisions, especially as mad scientists and rogue entrepreneurs, we like data. It's in our title, Mastery with Science, and what science loves is evidence, right? We want to be able to run some sort of test and retest and see how it really works. With something like COVID being so unique, there is no data. We can't get that evidence the same way. So that throws us for a loop just as people, especially people that are looking for kind of evidence and data to make some educated decisions. What do you do then? Like, what do you do without that data? You have to really go with the best evidence that you can kind of build from that. And that's going to be different for individuals, especially in a situation like this. Your answer might not be the best answer for everyone else. People have to take in all kinds of things into consideration. Income level, what things are going to cost, transportation. Are they working? Is this also, I hate to say it, unfortunately in this society we've also turned education into childcare. And for a lot of people that does play a role. So these are not right or wrongs. These are not to make judgments on anyone or to say that we agree with anything that I'm even saying right now. But it's just the true reality of what we're dealing with at this moment. And
you say you're not judging anybody. I can feel your eyes judging me, man. Then nobody can see it, but you're judging.
I'm not judging anyone for the things I'm saying right now. I'm judging you for whole different reasons.
Yeah,
could be that shirt.
It really, it's everybody's individual decision. But as a business owner, I really had to think about, well, you know what's my choice here? Do I have a nanny because we don't have family around that can watch our kid? Do I have a nanny sit there and watch him while he's doing virtual education in first grade? I don't even know if he has the focus to do that sort of thing. Or do I leave my business or cut out hours from my business that I'm running, that I'm using to support and feed my family? What is the right role? And we really did have to struggle and make a choice. And choices like that are not easy. And I feel like a lot of times in life, especially, with social media and with entertainment, it's easy to see something out there that says, it should be an easy decision. This is an easy decision or that's an easy decision. But a lot of decisions in life aren't easy. And a lot of times we don't have data and evidence to work from. And so we've got to kind of make what's I guess, our most educated guesses.
And we see that, as you're mentioning, looking at social media and stuff, I think that's why we see these arguments that are so not based in reality.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. I'm gonna post on Facebook right now. You're wrong. It's the opposite of what you just said. 100%.
Exactly. No matter what it is, and we shut down the other point of view, right? So we don't think past that initial thought of, well, this is the first thought I have, so I have to be right, or this is what I heard someone say that I agree with, so they have to be right. We don't take into the fact that there could be different factors that play a role. And for each person in that scenario that you're even talking about is going to be different, right? So your wife's going to feel different than you feel. The child's going to feel a little different than you feel and your wife feels. The teacher that's going to be educating them and has to go to school might feel totally different, like what safety precautions are put in place for them. So the school could be doing everything possible. What about sick days? Does the teacher get, teachers generally get 10 sick days a year. Now, if they go out for COVID for 2 weeks because of testing, do they lose all their sick days? What's being taken into consideration? There's so many variables that don't get the full discussion because everyone's looking at their own lane and how it affects them. And that's why it's important that we are taking into consideration all these outside factors. And that means listening and talking to other people that have different opinions, that have different views, because we want to be malleable. That's how we gain real science, is by taking in different considerations, trying different experiments that necessarily aren't our hypothesis that we were planning, right? We have the initial hypothesis that we think is going to happen, but we have to test it in so many different ways to make sure those other things aren't true also. And I think that's what we're dealing with in a unique way right now.
I like the word you use, malleable, ability to adapt. The human species, all species, the genetics that get passed on are the ones that are able to adapt the quickest. Not necessarily the strongest or the fastest. It's the quickest to adapt. It's the people who are malleable. So, it's interesting to kind of hear you say, hey, and bring up the fact that so many people are really, let's use stubborn as a word, right? They've dug their heels in on an opinion and a position. And, it's safe to say from my perspective, and I'm not speaking for you or anybody else, Doc, but you got to be open-minded. You got to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to take a look at evidence as it comes up and shift your position. If you want to be successful in business and in life, you better be ready and prepared to do so. I just think that's 100% must.
Exactly. The thing that survives most businesses is the ability to pivot. Where's Blockbuster right now? They're gone. They did not pivot. They didn't open up their thought process to try different things. They stuck with their tried and true, what they know. They didn't pivot, and now they're gone.
I'd have you know that Blockbuster is not gone. They have a single store still open and one of the hottest Twitter feeds you're going to find out there today. Don't believe me? Go check it out. All our listeners, if you're on Twitter, you best go check out Blockbuster's Twitter feed because they put Wendy's to shame. They are hot. They are good, man. I'm telling you.
And slight update for JB, who might have missed it, that they are selling that location right now, and it might be gone by the time this thing goes live.
Way to deflate the balloon over here, dude. That's all right. I see how it goes.
But the idea from that is the ability to pivot, right? And even talking about your decision right now of the plan to start with school and look what private school looks like. We don't know what that's going to actually look like as it starts to take shape. You might have to pivot. You might have we could be talking in a week or two from now and bring this back up, and there could be a totally different outcome. But that's part of business and life is survival, and part of that survival is knowing when you have to make those pivots to keep going.
Yeah, knowing when you have to sell that Blockbuster store, I guess.
Still my Blockbuster card, though.
Yeah.
Be useful someday.
Now you're just dating yourself, bro. So yeah, I mean the school and a kid is just one real example of the struggle we're all dealing with here. I mean, running a business in this environment is really difficult. I'm lucky that I run a business that's really a service. I don't necessarily have to be in front of people face to face to run my business. And you and I certainly were able to do something like this. We don't need to be in a room together running a business like this. It's got to be a huge challenge for those of you out there who do have businesses that are much more physical and need to be belly to belly with people is what we used to call it. Could you imagine being belly to belly with people today? 6 feet. 6 feet. He's laughing. You can't hear him, but he's laughing. I'll tell you.
I'm not responding to that one because I don't want to call from human resources.
Well, I am human resources in our business. This is what you got. Benefit of a
What's
small
interesting
business,
is I am in a service business also, right? So I, in my private practice in the mental health world, we have transitioned mostly to online as well. There still is some cases that we do need to see in office because there is a different level of service that is needed that you can't replicate online. And there is differences that you have to make adjustments to in that world. And those that know the doctor a little bit and or spend any time on our bio page knows that I came from the hospitality world prior and spent a lot of time in the restaurant business. And that is one of those businesses that's getting hit really hard right now. And they've had to pivot and they've had to get creative on the way that they handle things and keep going, switching their whole strategy from in-service, in-house, sit-down service to, and initially in the beginning, all takeout. And if anyone's ever worked in that kind of field, they know those strategies are totally different on how you have to run a business. And unfortunately, the way the restaurant business is right now, the margins are so small, even shrinking to like a 50% seating, that's not what their business was designed, right? That's not what their business was designed for. Their margins, their menu prices, their cost out was all set on keeping that place full. So another player that you just have to see major pivots.
Yeah, and the restaurant industry especially is like the microcosm of this. It's really, you could just focus in on that and say that is a great example of an in-person business that is just struggling. Well, here's the good news, and I'm curious. Yeah, I want to throw this out to you as a true or false from where you sit, Doc. We will, and this is not the true and false part because this I don't need to be a psychic to see the future on this. We will see a number of businesses like restaurants close if this continues. Period. End of story. It's happening if this continues. The question is, do you believe it serves as an opportunity for the businesses that are able to get through it? Do you think you're going to see restaurants come out stronger and more innovative and more successful because the very, very crowded space is now no longer as crowded? True or false? What's your opinion on that?
Or. Is that acceptable?
Did you just go with or? You're such a doctor, man. Come on.
Split the difference. Actually, I think it is true in a lot of ways. I think there's some false parts to it because I think a lot of initial businesses that we saw close down, and I'm not talking about the small mom and pops as much, but a lot of the big corporations used this as a very good excuse to cut some of their losses. They didn't have to take the hit of, I'm closing business and, the negative effect that comes with that as a business owner from the masses. So they were able to use that as a good cover as to, reorganize some of those locations that they weren't doing that well to begin with. So I think they'll come out stronger naturally because they were able to cut some of those weaker areas under the guise of COVID. So mom and pops got really smart, and they definitely reorganized in a way that they made their cost cutting and their production a little bit tighter. And if they can survive, this will come out even stronger because now they're able to do things that they didn't even think about before and reinvent themselves. And like you said, they'll have that kind of attention that was more of a crowded space before. And like most things, when you come out of things, you learn. So we're going to see some great strategies that are going to come out of this, and place people that never had the opportunity to create something will be able to create things, businesses, restaurant ideas, and they'll be able to use the strategies they learned during this time using this time to educate to come out really strong. And I think we'll see some places that are going to be even better than ever.
Yeah, I'm excited to see some of the innovation out there. It's only a matter of time. In fact, it's already out there. We probably just haven't heard of it yet or seen it yet. But that's going to matriculate, through the internet and things. We're gonna start hearing about how some of these shops and restaurants and businesses are doing things very differently and with a ton of success. So we will see who has been able to pivot and who has been able to innovate, and it's going to be very exciting for people like that, and it will open up the doors of opportunity for other people to enter back into the space and take advantage of that, and maybe just shift the way that they do business. When we see real dramatic shifts, I mean, this is like a paradigm shift. This is what we call paradigm, where we had one way of doing things and now we're going to be doing it a totally different way. I think that's very realistic with something like COVID, and we're going to see that, and it'll be in one sense really exciting to see. But on the flip side of that, we've got a ton of people struggling and dealing with frustration and a lot of stress, and it's interesting to see how people are managing to that stress and dealing with that frustration, because clearly we have that ourselves, each and every one of us. Anybody who's dealing with this right now, which is everybody, we've got a certain level of stress with it, because whether or not you put stock into the coronavirus and COVID, you're still impacted by everything going around you. So it's not a political thing. We are all actually dealing with additional levels of stress that we didn't have previously because of this. And that's where, if there's anything I would say to those of you out there dealing with the stress and the frustration, the number one thing that works for me when it comes to managing stress and frustration is action. And I don't always know what the right action to take is. I don't always know how to react, and sometimes responding is taking a stab at my best possible guess. But if I can do anything actionable, I at least feel like I'm controlling the controllables. And to me, that's a really important thing.
Do you have any examples for our listeners on the way that JB would take action?
Yeah, absolutely. So for my business, I know what my actionable items are that drive sales, and I'm in a business where I don't earn income unless I close business. You eat what you kill type of business model, I guess. I run a business. It's up to me, and I provide a service. And so the question is, what activity drives that service? What activity gets people to make a decision to close business, to drive income? And I know what they are. And for me, they're very simple. They're conversations with centers of influence, people that know other people that are my avatars, my ideal clients. And then it's the actual clients that have needs, or the ones that don't know they have needs that I need to help develop those needs. But either way, it's the amount of contact I have with those people will always drive my business. And so for me, you ask me, well, what do I do? What do I mean when I say take action? I mean, forget all the distractions, forget everything else out there. I know for me, I need to pick up the phone, or I need to schedule a Zoom, and I need to get in front of these people, period. That's it. If I do that, I am controlling the things in my control, and I know long-term, if I follow that business plan, I will see and continue to see success in my business. So when I say actionable, that's exactly what I mean.
And I think that's some great input and insight for our listeners. And I'll add to that, because I know a lot of people, you mentioned Zoom, you mentioned contact, and there's a thing called Zoom fatigue, and there is that overwhelmingness of doing it in a whole different way. And here's where the balance comes in a little bit. And this would be my advice to add on to that. You definitely want to take your initiative. You want to take your action. You want to make that action very much count. But you also want to balance that. So schedule your time appropriately, making sure that when you're working, that you're all in and you're working. But when it's time to clock out, you're spending some time with your family. You're spending some time with your friends, even if it is virtually. The Zoom fatigue would be a totally different world. If you are stuck on a Zoom call because you are at work, is different from a Zoom call at happy hour with your friends or playing a game. So don't put those two things in the same category. Make sure you're separating it out. And that I even mean changing locations, maybe setting up an office part where you only do your work, and then maybe doing the games or the fun in your kitchen, or in your living room. And so setting some actual areas that are specific to the idea that what you're doing. So you can find some of that balance. Even though you're stuck in the same house for the whole thing all day, you can really, your brain can compartmentalize.
Say what?
Say the areas, and it knows if you're in your office that you're there for work, and if you're in your living room, you're there for fun. So make sure you set that up for yourself.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me the doctor over here has been doing a lot of happy hours on Zoom and not inviting me to any of them. I don't know how I feel about this. We have not had any Zoom happy hours together, and we have all the opportunities in the world. What am I, just a work buddy for you? I'm not even worthy of happy hour invitations.
I have to turn my brain off. I can't take it any longer.
You can't take me any longer. Yeah, it can be a lot. It can be a lot. You know,
we know that.
So it's funny because I have the ability to like stop the video on my end. Like maybe you need to have the ability to stop the video on your end. Like just turn JB off for like 5 minutes. He won't even know. I actually had a really good friend and a salesperson I used to work alongside. You want to talk about a story as somebody who could just keep talking. You'd be like, dude, you're too much. You're too much. And this is coming from me. So take that to mean like, wow. Think about that. Yeah. Wow. Think about that. So this guy, I was in a job where we drove a lot. And he drove a lot and I drove a lot. You know, we didn't really work in an office. We went out and visited people in their offices, and we're on this drive and he's talking and he's talking and he's talking, and I can't get a word in edgewise, kind of like the doctor. And one of us loses the phone call. One of us loses the phone call. Okay, so the phone is now dead. There is nobody on the other line, and I think it might have been me, because it was like 3 or 4 minutes before I was able to call him back and get a hold of him again. And I call him back, Doc, and I go to tell him, like, oh, sorry, you know, the call dropped, you know, this is where I lost you. Man, I am not joking you right now. He was still talking. He didn't even know I dropped off. It didn't even like I don't know how he answered the phone, or if it just like reconnected or something, or like, you know, my line was like put on hold or something. He literally didn't stop talking that entire time. He didn't even know I was gone. Crazy.
So you weren't necessary for that part of the conversation.
Clearly, nobody was necessary for his part of the conversation. He just wanted to talk. He had a long drive ahead of him. He was talking, man.
I can relate.
Yeah. All right. You know, have at it. Have at me here.
Obviously, we kid each other because that's part of the balance, right? You got to have a little bit of fun in the craziness. So making sure you are doing that for yourself. Have a little bit of fun. And, you know, on a serious note, if you guys are struggling with it, please reach out to people that can help you. It is a serious time to making sure that we are looking out for each other. So I just want to add that in as someone who knows and deals with that a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Doc. We said it, right? Frustration, stress, dealing with this. We have a lot of uncertainty out there. We're all kind of in a new place. It's real easy to find yourself in a bad spot mentally with this type of thing. I would imagine for a lot of people, and so I would hope anybody listening, you know, we're here to strengthen you and build you up and recreate you in a lot of ways. We mix and match some of the best of the old recipes with our new formulas. You hear it in our introduction, but the fact of the matter is, there's a time and a place where if you need to seek some outside help, seek some outside help. No, nothing to be ashamed of with that. I think it shows a real sense of character and strength to be able to acknowledge when you need some outside help and assistance.
And to add that it doesn't have to always be because you're feeling depressed or stressed. Those are the times we definitely want to make sure that you're connecting with someone. But even just talking about business, we started this talking about how business has to pivot and change. A great way to talk out some of those ideas is find somebody that can relate either to your business or is also in a business situation similar to yours, where you can just brainstorm with and talk ideas out with, and really figure out some great ideas. Just like we mentioned with those restaurants that are going to come out the other side with some great innovation, do the same thing. You don't have to be in that restaurant that we talked about. This is your time to do the same. So make those connections with people that can help build you up. You're part of your circle, right? And your circle describes how you're going to become. So build that circle up to succeed.
Yeah, one of the things that reminds me of, I'm curious, our listeners have heard of this before, or if you have, Doc, you're familiar with mastermind groups?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it sounds a whole lot like, think about getting a mastermind group together of some sort. We should probably do just a whole episode around masterminds. Maybe we can have somebody come on the show and talk to us that runs a mastermind group, because to me, it's a really strong concept nowadays. Just a number of business people, maybe not even in the same profession, but people willing to share ideas, walk through challenges together, and provide some of that insight and that support. They can go a long way.
Definitely. Although my brain, as soon as I hear mastermind, always wants to go to like the League of Justice and Lex Luthor and
go on.
Different mastermind, I think.
Meanwhile, since I have a 6-year-old, I'm thinking like Megamind. If any of you have seen that movie, it's actually a cute movie.
And for all of you Hall of Justice fans out there, he totally just missed the meanwhile back at the Hall of Justice.
Yes, I did. I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
Because you're not like the cool people.
Yeah, well, you know what? Megamind had a piranha and a robot body as his sidekick, so I thought that was pretty cool. All right, that might be our cue.
On that note,
to shut the laboratory doors down here and put it on ice for the day. What do you think, Doc?
The fumes are starting to get to us.
All right, everybody. We covered a lot today, Doc. Huh? We really did. We talked about some of the challenges out there that we've been facing personally, how to deal with it, innovation, pivoting, stress.
We would love to hear some of the things that you guys are going through. We mentioned in the beginning we have a Facebook community group. That's a great place to interact, to have some conversations. You can leave some comments in our podcast on all those platforms that you're reading it. But a really great place to get some good interaction is on that Facebook open community group. It's free. It's a great place to interact, like I said, to ask some questions, to get some feedback, and to share some thoughts. I mean, I'd love to hear some of you guys' stories and how you've pivoted and some of the ways that you've come out of this already and plan to come out of this even better.
Yeah, if you jump on the Facebook group, which we highly recommend and encourage, give the podcast a shout. Let us know you joined from the podcast. We want other people to know that we've got the podcast going on there as well. And don't forget, everybody, what do we have upcoming? A free online webinar. We're going to be talking about some of the sales fundamentals, sales fundies. That's skinny on what you need to know with sales, some really cool stuff. And we got some freebies associated with that. Check it out. It's in the show notes. At JB and the Doctor. We're not just a podcast. We're on YouTube. We've got some pretty fun stuff over there. We're on Instagram, Twitter. We've got Facebook as well as the Facebook group. Check us out. A lot of different content on a lot of different platforms, and really excited to have you engaging with us on all levels here.
Each one brings a different story and an avenue. Try to keep it fresh.
So fresh, so clean.
You know it.
All right, everybody. I'm JB.
And I'm the Doctor.
And we'll see you later.
Peace out, yo.